Good afternoon, Ngozi Talk Shows family. Is Nomsa here at Ngozi Talk Shows. Find your own voice, lead from within. So with me today, I'm with Dr. Biget. How are you, Dr. Biget?
I'm doing very well, Numsa. Thank you. It's honor and delight to have you here. Good afternoon, evening, and morning, everyone, depending on when you hear this.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We've not seen you for a few months now.
Thank you.
Yeah, we miss you, and I think our audience missed you too as well.
Thank you.
So our topic today is coping with grief and loss. Grief is a deeply personal journey that affects everyone differently, whether it's the loss of a loved one, relationship, job, or a significant life change. Grief can bring emotionally, physically, and mentally challenge. While the pain may feel overwhelming, understanding the grieving process and finding healthy ways to cope can help you to heal over time. So today we're going to share step-by-step guide to navigate grief, embracing healing, and finding hope beyond the loss. Over to you, Dr. Biget. What do you think about the topic? I know you are a grieving coach, so please do tell the
Thank
audience
you.
what you think.
Thank you, Numsa. And yes, as a grief coach, I would say that coping with grief and loss is a good and not so good idea. So it is absolutely necessary to be able to learn the way to cope at the very beginning, effective and correct way. But beyond that, coping can actually keep you stuck. And it also lowers the bar of your own for yourself. And then it can, if you focus on coping, then it can actually also keep you from healing. And the reason for that is coping, the word coping. Now, everybody interpret differently, but in general, if you look at the dictionary and the way most people interpret coping, if you people said, oh, I can cope with that, I can cope with overwork, I can cope with me crying every day, I can cope with having to not have AC in the summer. These are typically the way people use the word cope, and cope implies surviving. So you can survive, you can still survive this, and you can survive. Can you survive crying every day? And of course, most people could. Can you survive not being able to focus and be present with your family as your family is doing things because you secretly grieving? Yeah, you could. But is it good for you? Is it healthy for you? Is it empowering for you? Is it life-giving for you? No, it's not. And so that's when coping that becomes something that is not good for somebody after a loss, after a grievous event, any of the 40 different causes of grief. And instead, I typically tell client after the very initial state, and the very initials means like a week. After that, you want to learn to navigate and move through and recover from the grief and the loss. And also when you do that, when you are just coping, you actually not very much honoring to the person whom you love. Because when you're coping, the human body is such a way where it's something painful. Coping means there is something painful. And just like if you're living without AC in the hot summer, that's very uncomfortable even for your physical body. And your physical body will try to do anything, including your brain. And we know grief affected our brain, particularly the limbic system. And your body, your nervous system, your brain will try to suppress everything, including every good memory of the person or the individual whom you lost, and that way it's actually make you more and more disconnected with the one that whom you have lost. And so coping, to me, at the beginning you will need it at the very, very beginning, but after that you want to learn to move through, and then you want to learn to recover from the grief and the loss, and this way you will be able to thrive instead of just surviving. But even more, as importantly, you will be honoring your loved one, particularly if you're able to transform that loss into a legacy for the person, and be able, allowing you to also, when you recover, it's also allow you to remember the person in the way that he or she deserve to be remembered. When you recover and you're no longer in pain, you will free the part of your brain that is being used for grieving to be able to remember happy memory. Most people don't know this. I don't you I think know this, Numsa, but as you know, when we're grieving, everything happen in our life, in our mind. It's in our heart, influence our brain, and affected our brain. The part of brain that's being used or affected by grief is the exact same part that is needed to feel happy. So if this is your whole brain here, grief take this whole area here. But for us to be able to feel happy, we also need this area, the so-called the hippocampus, the limbic system, the whole limbic system, hippocampus, hypothalamus, the amygdala, and the prefrontal cortex. The only difference is grief also affected anterior singular cortex, while happiness affected vesicular nucleus. So if you're grieving, the space in your brains that needed for being happy is being taken, and you're not going to be able to feel happy for your loved one. You're not going to be able to be, who are still here. It'll be hard for you to remember to a good memory for your loved one who has passed. You're not going to be able to feel happy for everything that is beautiful in your life now, and that's not honoring to even the one who has passed, or the one who has moved forward, or to yourself.
I like that, Dr. Biggett, when you say when we're grieving, the part of our body changes, we are not able to experience that happiness. So how do we then understand the stages of grief so we can grieve freely and then get that freedom? How do we avoid going on denial or anger or bargaining or depression so that we can go to accept, like you say, accept the what we are grieving for, whether it's loss of our loved ones or whatever the loss that might be. So how do we then go to acceptance without going through? Because if we go in denial, there's part of you that feels numb. It feels like you don't really want, you're hoping that the news will be different. So how do we then?
So I love your question, Numsa, and that is actually the first one being to cope instead of to move through and recover. But the stages of grief is the second very common myth or misunderstanding about grief. Many people say, excuse me, to cope. While what better for all of us, and is it wrong to cope? No. Excuse me, if that's all you want. Again, there's no right or wrong in what you want for yourself. But I'm not saying that one thing or the other is wrong. But there is nothing wrong if you only want to cope. If you want to cope only, that's okay. But now you understand the difference between coping and moving through and recovering. And it is up to you whether you want to be in a better state or being just surviving. And the second, and another common misunderstanding is the stages of grief. Many times we hear, oh, somebody grieving, what stage is he? Has he been in this stage? And I have so many people come to me and say, you know, I think I'm still stuck in my grief because my friend, my neighbor, my therapist, my mindset coaching, my whomever, or myself sometimes when they are reading books and things, because I never experienced this stage, or I seem to cannot get myself to the anger stage or whatever, whatever stages. The truth about the stages, and this is written in the later publication, so you can actually find this out in the publication as well. The stages of grief, the 5 stages of grief created by the that is for somebody. Excuse me.
You need water or drink.
I got water. Thank you. So, created by Dr. Kubler-Mensah, it is something that created for people who are experiencing terminal illness, and the stages has been expanded to those whose loved one experienced terminal illness, but it does not apply to any other type and causes of grief. There are more than 40 different causes of grief, and so that's just 2 of the 40 plus different causes of grief where the stages apply. The rest of them, I have one person come to me and say, you know, my her husband, I believe I mentioned that one even in my book, Seeking Peace, and her husband passed away, and she was really sad. She was grieving. By the time she came to me, she's been grieving for quite some time, and she said, well, her healthcare provider told her that one of the reasons that she was stuck in grief is because she never get into the anger state and never really experienced the denial state. She said, what am I going to be in denial about? Guys passed away. And I'm not angry. She's like, there is a part of her that, if she wants to be honest, she was a little bit disappointed by he's no longer there, but he wasn't even angry. She said he was a very well-to-do gentleman, and he is a bit older. He's almost 20 years, just some 20 years older than her. So he has everything set up such that she never have to work anymore in her life. She can go on vacation for the rest of her life, and so on and so forth. And he already said, listen, we know this is gonna happen, and you have all my permissions, my blessing, and my wish for you to be able to please, remarry, meet another person, and on and on and on. And he passed away in the most beautiful way, which is he passed away in his sleep. And which is what he wanted. And he was like, he has a full life. He has a wonderful full life. Do I want him to live until 100 instead of die at 80? Of course. But am I angry? No. Am I angry at myself for marrying somebody who's 20 years something older than me? I'm not even. We have 20 plus years of wonderful marriage. And that was even more than what I was expecting. It's like I couldn't get to the denial. I couldn't get to the anger. And this is just one example. There's many other examples. There is a mother who with a strange child, and she kept being told, oh, you never get into this state. You never forgive. You never forgive. And then some other states that she didn't get to, supposedly. But when it is not from terminal illness, as well as if it is not your loved one facing terminal illness, the stages does not apply to you necessarily. Can some people experience the stage? Yes. Or part of it? Yes. But if you notice, oh, I'm not in denial yet, oh, I seems to not get to the anger or the bargaining state yet, or something, then please do not let that be an excuse for anybody who is not an expert in grief, who's helping you, as well as for yourself to keep you stuck. It is possible. I have countless number of people by now personally, and everyone from the Grief Recovery Institute and many other grief expert also has helped people, even when they are already in the state of prolonged complicated grief, they did not experience all these different states. It is still absolutely possible to move through. And how? If you don't, if in that case, if you notice you don't have the stage, the first step is to literally say, I am different, possibly, even if it is terminal illness. We know nowadays that they don't necessarily follow the stage in order, as well as they can spin around really quick, jump around, and everything with the stages. So, but if it is if it is not terminal illness, if situations, please know that if you never experience a stage, that's normal. And what you want to do is continue to receive help if you are not able to do it yourself promptly in a way that you would love, such that you're able to recover from your grief. You're muted.
I love that, Dr. Biggett, where you shared an example of the woman that lost her husband at the age of 80. Yeah, there are some people who really celebrate the death. I was talking to my friend the other day, and she was like, when I was ill, there were times where I got really ill and I felt ready to go. And I was like, I'm looking at her, but she's still alive. And she was, because I was so much in pain, I felt so free and I felt like I'm ready to die. And I was like, I was like, oh my God. She was like, and people like that, when they're ready to go, and then the families, those who stays behind, and they hold them, and they're like, can't cope with it. I think what you're saying, that woman who celebrated her husband, I think that's what we should do, even if it's hard, to actually let it go, to actually grieve freely. I think we should just celebrate, but it's not easy though to actually celebrate, to acknowledge that death, and then come to a place of acceptance. Um, but support is always there. At what point where you should feel like, I think now I should get support, not going through this alone. Like, you have clients that come to you, at what point where they come to you and say, Dr. Biggett, you know what? I don't think I can cope on my own. I'm trying to ask as much answers as I can, because I'm not a grief coach. So I need to learn at the same time while I'm
Everybody is different. And how do you know if you want to, if it is good for you to receive support? Let me ask you, Numsa, and the audience. If you break your legs, is it good for you to receive support? Is it good for you to at least have a cast, if not full crutches or even a wheelchair, depend on what happened, right?
ask for help
So,
straight away. Yeah.
exactly. So when your heart is broken because of any of the 40 different causes of grief, and I'm going to pause in there for a moment. Some people might have said, she keeps saying for more than 40 different causes of grief. What is he talking about? Most of the time, we know there are four major causes of the noun four major causes of grief: death, divorce, dire diagnosis, job loss. But there are the true definitions of grief are the unsettled feelings caused by a change. Has anybody experienced major change in life lately in the last few years? A loss or unmet hope. Unmet hope could be you thought the community will be one way or the other, and then right now you look around, depending on where you live, perhaps, and the community is going exactly the opposite directions where you want to be. And that can cause a lot of grief. There's a good part of people here in the US that they come to me and say, "Yeah, I'm grieving about whatever the reason they are grieving, and I'm grieving about this." And so, we're not going to go there, but just know because of that, there are more than 40 different causes of grief. Now, with any of the more than 40 different causes of grief, how do you know when you are to receive help? Having grief that taken you aback, not just there is difference between grief and stress. Changes can cause stress for you, but you can say, okay, you know what, this is I don't like these changes, but I'm doing all right. It does not influence me from my day to day. It does not influence me. Of course, you need to take care of the cause of the stress, but it does not keep you up at night. It does not make you change your eating habit. It does not make you feel unsettled and it's seemingly having flashback or something, or even if it's not flashback, you just suddenly startled by this whole situation. It does not influence your work by any means in any ways, or anything. It's just something you got to deal with. For instance, for me, I seems to have a series of leak in this house for whatever reason, and that was annoying, and that was adding a little stress. Could that cause a little bit grief? Yeah, it was a little bit grief by definitions, but it wasn't. It didn't keep me up at night. It didn't. Of course, it took a little time from my work because I need to put the time to deal with it. But that's about it. So that type of things, that stress, that's you probably best take care of it yourself. But if it is something that taken you aback, it is something that follow you throughout the day. It is something that you are sitting there working at, say, your computer or wherever you are. It's something where you're driving, and then 5 or even 50 minutes later, you say, "Oh, where was I? I've been sitting in front of the screen for an hour and a half, and apparently my mind was in somewhere else." Or you're driving and you miss two exits, and you're like, "Holy moly, okay, let's regroup here." So if that's the case, which is happened with a lot of people here living in this area, and if that's the case, then it's time to get help. And when just like when having broken heart, when you're grieving, your heart's broken. It's like having a broken leg. Why you want to get help from early on? Now, if you are somebody who are a grief specialist, happen to be, you perhaps able to take care milder cases, just like an orthopedic surgeon's. If all that happen is his arm is a little bit, there's a break that's not causing a separation, just a crack on the bone. Can an orthopedic surgeon take care of himself that way if you happen to be a grief specialist? Of course. But if it is something that is beyond that, where you need to put a complete, a full cast, of doing surgery and things like that, even an orthopedic surgeon, using the analogy of broken leg, cannot heal cannot work and heal his own legs. And the same thing with when you have broken heart. Even as grief specialists, if it is a very impactful grief, we reach out and ask for help sooner than later, because just like if you have a broken leg, the longer you wait, the more complicated it becomes. And that's part of the reasons with the prolonged, complicated grief that we know nowadays, is because people wait and say, "Oh, I'm going to try to tough this up. I'm going to try to cope. I'm going to cope. I'm coping. I'm still crying every day, but I'm coping. But yet now this seems to be ruining my marriage, but must be because the other persons don't understand me. I'm trying to cope. Perhaps you want to consider to move forward from the cope. And please understand that moving forwards does not mean getting over. Moving forward also does not mean you are going to forget the loved one or no longer love your loved one. It's actually the exact opposite. You will love the person just as much and remember them better.
I like it, Dr. Pickett, when you say moving forward, it does not mean getting over things, because moving forward, it means I'm okay with what is going on. You're accepting things, but in your own path as well, not feeling that you have to, you've got to do it, it has to happen. Why am I feeling that way without blaming yourself? I think it's really, really important. And also, when you talk about unmet hope, um, sometimes people feel that grieving is all about losing someone through death. But sometimes we get disappointed every day, even in business, we get disappointed when things don't work. Well, like you said, the lake in your home now is leaking, your home is leaking. So those are the things that when you get a house, you don't really expect those kind of things to happen. But then but things do happen. I think people needs to really, when you say just get support as soon as possible, I think that is really, really important for someone. Those guys, if you're listening and you've gone through grief, it took me years and years for me to actually grieve for my dad, because I didn't know how to live without him. My stepdad died and my daddy followed. I was now, the people that I love the most have gone. I'm left with my mom. It was like, okay, how do I now cope with my mom? I felt that they've left me responsibilities to look after my mom. Without them, there was so much mixed emotions. Like normally when I call, my dad will answer the phone. And all these things, I felt that they were taken away from me. And sometimes I'll get angry if my family tell me that oh, we are there for you and stuff. I'll feel like they're trying to replace my dad. And so I think it's really, really important. But what I did is to go to a psychologist. And just because someone is a therapist, it doesn't mean that they can deal with grief. That part I've learned because I went to about 3 psychologists, but they couldn't really help me with what I was going through. And even though they were trying to trigger my feelings, but they couldn't. It was when I left, when I actually started praying to God now, dealing with step-by-step emotions that I was going through, that really, really helped me. So what advice, Dr. Biggett, can you give someone who is going through grief and they feel that, because some people, they actually blame God. They're like, God, I go to church. There's some Christians who go to church and they lose their loved ones. They're like, I don't feel that I can go to church. Where was God when my loved ones died? They get angry. So what advice can you give someone who has that feeling within them that, like, I don't feel that I should be really going to church, or I should be really thinking that God is there, but where was he when my loved one died?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful question, Numsa. I want to point out something. We mentioned this before, and the last thing that before I answer that question, the last thing we mentioned was about what is moving forward. And moving forward does not mean not loving. Moving forward, it's actually allow yourself to love just as much and actually celebrate, cherish, and honor the person even more. And your experience actually a good example with this. If you have not recovered, you have recovered from the passing of your dad and your stepdad. But imagine if you have not recovered, and anytime you open your mouth about either of them, you either got into a rage or you will get into a meltdown. That you'll sit there and cry and cry and cry about them uncontrollably, or you'll get very angry and get into a rage to the point you cannot focus. Would you be sharing? You shared many times about them and how amazing they are, and how much they help you, and they're there for you. You share great memories and moments about your dads that I learned that, oh wow, these are really great men. If you have not recovered from your grief, and every time you open or even think about them, you will cry or get into a rage, would you be able to share about them on the talk show? No, you wouldn't be talking about them, because you're like, oh my God, if they even come to my mind, I'm going to be crying. And if I open my mouth and say about them, I'll cry for the next half an hour, man. Never mind the talk show, right? So this is an example, and you will try to suppress them in your memory. This apply if you are grieving. This apply to you. See how this apply to you, and with that, you will not be able to share about their legacy, which is not honoring to them. Versus you have recovered, you share about their legacy, which is an act of love to them, which is very honoring to them, which is very beautiful and what they deserve. And keep your memory about them in a healthy way, and keep your closeness to them and all the good things that they are, instead of, oh, this is so painful to remember, I don't want to think about this. Oh, this is so painful to talk about, I can't even talk about this. That's not very that's not good for you or your loved one. So I just want to point out how beautiful it is to be able to recover and to be able to share their legacy. And back to your questions about the people who get angry with God, a couple things about that. Number one, please know that it is normal, because sometimes we get angry at God or the universe or anything that we got angry, and then we feel bad for getting angry. And many people will also tell us, depend on what's going on. Many people in certain communities say, it's, oh please, you can't possibly be angry at the universe, in the spiritual community or perhaps in a religious community. But how could you blame God? God is all, so don't get angry at God. What's wrong with you getting angry with God? And so many people, actually, a fair number of people come to me, they say, listen, this happened and I tried this and this does not work, and I'm very angry at God. And unfortunately, I'm also very isolated right now, because people in my community, usually the leader of the community understand, so the pastor, the priest understand, but a lot of people in the community doesn't necessarily do. They're not all grief specialists, understandably, or they're not priest and pastor. So they become. Not only that, now I'm very isolated, because I'm angry at God. I can't stand going to church. And then all these people, if I even indicate anything, my friends from the church, and all my friends are from church or the spiritual community, this is not just church, I say, indicate anything that I'm angry at the universe or God, they said, how could you? And so I went through this. I'm grieving, I'm angry, I'm isolated, and I feel miserable, and I feel guilty for feeling angry, and I'm angry at God or the universe, and then I'm angry at all those people, and I'm just and I feel guilty. And so many people feel guilty for feeling bad, for feeling angry. People feel bad for feeling bad. Please know, number one, that that's a normal thing. If you have a loved one, a friend, a spiritual community center member who get angry, that's a normal reaction. Anger is an expression of grief. the most common expression of grief is anger. And people who are grieving, we one of the reasons we get angry is because we feel that we cannot control whatever it is that's going on. And when people feel they cannot control, they got angry. When people feel they got disappointed by somebody, including the universe or God, we also get angry. So it's very normal for somebody to get angry. So if you feel angry at God or the universe, just know that your feeling is valid. You do not need to feel bad about it. Now, what can you do? What can you do to navigate through this? And a couple things. First, talk to somebody who can relate. Talk to somebody who can relate and understands instead of saying you shouldn't be that way. There is no should in grief. Everybody is different. Grief and your feeling, it's kind of like the combination of your fingerprints, supposed to be unique to you. There's no shoot this and shoot that and what have you. So talk to somebody and find support from somebody who understand and who can relate. And secondly, sometimes we say, why God do this? When for us who are in different religions, different, but for us who are in the Christian community, Christian Catholic community with the Bible, there is a story of Jobs in the Bible. And the story of Jobs is a very devout follower to God. And then Jobs start to experience all sort of different things. He lost his loved one, he lost his business, and lost everything else, even his house. And then Jobs started to experience illness that make him in great pain, and then have boils all over his body, and so on and so forth. And because this is back in the day, he's deformed. Not only he lost everything, even his house, his business, his loved one, everything. He was staying with his friend because of that. He has a lot of friends, but when he started having a lot of boils and everything, and he started feeling angry, the friend said, "You must be possessed by the demon. Look at you. You look like the demon. Get out of here." So his friends kicks him out. Can you imagine? The Jobs out on the street, and Jobs start to get angry with God. Understandably, very understandable. Of course, who wouldn't get angry with anything around them if this happens to you? Angry and heartbroken and disappointed. And then Jobs keeps asking God, and why do you allow Satan to do this? Why do you allow the demon to do this? To the point that he was blamed that he is the demon. And God says, well, because I need you. Because I need you. I need you to be an example. When you are able to go through all this, and then you're able to recover your faith, you will recover. And it took Job's effort to return to God, to resume his faith in face of everything that's going on, to resume his hope, to receive the help he could, and he did recover. And he became, as we know in the Bible, as an example, because God needed him.
Yeah, I think you are right, Dr. Bickett. Is sometimes in life, the battles that we face, God knows why we face those battles. But because as we don't know why we face whatever we face, we want things to be fixed the way we want. But God is preparing us for our tomorrow. So it's really, really important when someone loses their loved ones to surround yourself with people that can support you, people that can help you, not tell you what to do, but just to support you, be there. Because like for me, when I was talking to my dad, even though now I have grieved my father, I'm okay now, but there's still that place where I realized how special my father was and the relationship that I had. And I feel that no one in my family will ever feel that hole. Only God can help me to move on with my life and support and be there for my family. And but I always make it clear to my family. And my family, they know, they're like you and your father. They know that my relationship. And I know there are some people who've had their relationship with their dad, with their mothers, who have enjoyed that life, but even when they are gone, they still don't accept it like I did. So I would just say, for me, giving advice, for me, grieving for my parents, it would be like, just enjoy the memories, which is that's what I forgot to do, to enjoy every moment, embracing every moment that I spend with my parents. That's what I forgot, to actually embrace those good memories. And guess what? Good memories are the ones that hurt the most at the same time. So, but now that I've grieved, I, I can say that when I look at my father's picture, I laugh because to me, is out there. We will meet again in heaven. And when I look at my stepdad, I just laugh. I know that we'll meet again. But there's this thing, because my stepmom gone as well. So there's this thing where the elders now, it cannot, that atmosphere where the feeling of having elders around you, it cannot be filled by anyone. So you come to a place where you are like, okay, they're gone, and now I have to step up. And then you step up and live up to your own expectations with God. So yeah. So it's really, really, really important. But I just want to ask you a questions. How do you express your emotions creatively with people around you? I know we can write, we can paint, we can do music. Is there in journaling as well? Is there any other things you can dance? Dr. Biggett loves to dance, guys, like me. Is there any other things you can add?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to mention something that you mentioned just now about enjoying the memory. For some people, they might say, and if this happen to applies to you, for some people might say, I would love to enjoy my memory, but the only thing that I can comprehend right now is anytime I think about something, I I have a fewer clients right now, and anytime they mentions the name of the loved ones, they could not get into the good memory. There might be one that they can hang on to, but the rest was like everything is in the blur. And then anytime that they would want to enjoy the memory, and at the same time you cannot seems to get to those beautiful memory, and anytime you think about something, it's something that's so painful. It seems like the loss jump up to you, and then the beautiful memories left behind. And if that's happening to you, so in other words, you hear the people says, well, you got to think about the good times. You got to think about the good times. And you say, I can't think about the good times. I want to think about the good times. I know it's good for me to do that, but I can't. Then just know it is not your fault. It is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign you're still grieving. And back to the initial conversations, when we start, the part of your brain that is needed to feel happy and enjoy good memories still occupied by grief. That's why you cannot get to the good memory. The pain is so loud, the grief is so dominating, and we know that in our brain, the way our nervous system work, what fires together, wire together. So the longer, this is why I mentioned the sooner the better, because the longer you wait, the more of the nervous system wired, grief, 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 and they become a really strong chain of grief here. And over time, it's harder and harder. Is it possible? Yes. I have people whose grief for 40 years come to me. We can still help them recover. But is it easier if you say, oh, before they turn into a chain like that, while they're still going like this, you said, okay, no, we're not getting that. But if you are, I want to enjoy the memory. I really would love to be able to love in this, but all I can is because this is the part of your brain that's needed to feel happy, is the exact same part of your brain that is occupied by grief. And this is why you cannot, if this whole thing here, this whole part here is taken by grief, it's you might have one little piece here, and usually it's the act of kindness that you can remember, because this is the ventral striatum and nucleus accumbens for the good memories. But the rest is occupied by grief, and over here it's screaming pain, 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 pain from the anterior cingulates. Keep firing the pain and the grief such that you can't enjoy. So if you cannot think of the good memory, if the good memory make you cry instead of smile, just know that is simply, that is not a sign of weakness. That is not a sign that you're ungrateful. That is not a sign that you are not loving the person. It is simply a sign of grief, and you want to find somebody who really understand what's going on and accordingly able to help you. As Numsa says, psychologists are excellent, wonderful as provider, healthcare provider, but not every psychologist are grief specialists. And so find one who can understand you. And in terms of expressions of healing through creativity, it is really good things to do. But creativity can be anything. It could be art, could be dance, could be a lot of different things, but also could be something else. I have a lot of, when people work with me, I recommend creativity. I have one client, he literally, it was the loss of his wife and the mother of his two children, young children too. So their creativity was to paint cabinets. So they have cabinets, and he said, well, the kids, how am I going to have creativity with the kids? And he said, well, the kids are sad, so it was spring and summertime coming, so he make it a project for the family every weekend to paint one of the cabinet in the kids' bedroom. And he's like, I think that will freshen up the bedroom. It'll freshen up the cabinet, and then he'll get the kids involved, and then they can tell him, like, the girls want to have butterfly on her cabinets, and the boys want to have what have you, and so they paint the cabinet. They paint. She showed me pictures, and it was like one cabinet was like yellow, green, blue, and all these different things, and then it has like the butterflies, and then the other one has action figures and what have you. They painted 4 different cabinets. They painted one cabinet dresser. When I say cabinet, they painted dressers in each of the kid room, and each project takes a couple weeks, and so over 2 months they did this together. And so that is something that is an expression, and it's not all painting. So they paint that, with different color, and then he got stencils and things like that. He's like, there's no way I'm gonna throw a butterfly on that thing. So he went shopping with the girl, find some butterfly that they can put on there, and all these different things. And even throughout the week, it's become a fun project for the kid who just lost their mother. It's not taking them into denial. It's not forgetting about the mother. And then on each of them, they actually also put something in there that is that help the kid feel connected to their mother. So the girl put something on the new cabinet that keep her connected to the mother and honoring the mother. And the same thing, the boy put something in there. They have I think you call that a buffet or something in the family room, and they did that as well. And then they put things that they said, oh, so this one's, mommy and daddy, and so forth. It was a beautiful project that helped the kid look forward through the week to something on the weekend. And by the end of that, by the end of the 2 months or so project, he said, they actually able to have fun, they're able to laugh and cry together at times, and it's helped him to be even more connected. He's always close to his children. One is, I think they were like at the time they're all full adult now. This is 15 years ago. The kid was like 9 and 11 or something. It's like, make him feel much more connected to. They become like a really strong together. So that's just an example of anything you can do. I have one person literally that she said, I'm not into painting or anything, but she changed all the decorations in a couple of the room without buying much of anything. Sometimes we feel like, oh, we don't have the money to get the decorators. That's actually, you don't want a decorator. You want to decorate the way you want to do. And she'll simply move things around from her house and put it in different room and decorate it in a different way. So there's many different way to express your creativity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Biggett. I like it when you say creativity, like making an example regarding the family that created something special for their mother. I think it gives someone hope when you actually create a memory, and a memory that when you look at it, it brings smile to you. I think that is really, really amazing. And any words of encouragement you would like to leave with our audience? If anyone who's struggling with grief, what advice can you give them this moment?
I would say if you or your loved one is having a tough time with grief, firstly, my heart goes out to you. Talking about the grief, experiencing grief, and sometimes it's so painful and feels so unfair. Practically everyone who become grief specialists become one because of their own life experience. Grief specialist is not one of the sexy, sexy occupations. People don't get up and say, "Ooh, kids don't grow up say, I think I'm going to become a grief specialist." It just sounds so sexy, grieving. That's not like that. Practically everyone become grief specialists because of life experience. And so it can feel very unfair and extremely painful though at the time that you are going through it. But please know that regardless of how long it has been, doesn't matter what has happened, it is absolutely possible if you want to and you reach out and ask for support and take the actions necessary to be able to fully recover and turn things around, to transform your grief into something that is beautiful for you as well as your loved ones. And that is that. And if you feel that there is no help out there, keep searching, because a lot of time when we're grieving, our mind's clouded, so we feel that there is no help and there is no hope. But if you keep reaching out, keep searching, and keep allowing yourself to receive help, then there is help, and therefore there is hope for any and all of us to be able to recover from our grief and be able to, instead of just coping, and to be able to live life to the fullest, bringing good to your loved one as well as to yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Biggett. And please don't stay there. Not Seeking Support, Dr. Biggett. She's one of our grieving coach. Please do get in touch with her. You can either get in touch with her through social media or go to the website www.hseia.coach. She also has her own website as well. You can find that on her social media. Now social media, we are spoiled, it gives us everything that we need, or even if you type her name, you'll find her website. And she's wrote that book, Seeking Peace, as well. I've read the book. It's very beautiful. And just get in touch with her. Remember, you have to take the first step to be able to get that help that you need. And if you guys are watching on any part of social media, please do subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We have 2 groups. Please do join the group. Those groups, Unique Billionaire Mindset and Gossip Talk Shows. So it's Friday today. We will see you guys on a